situation where people are
Sprinkle
permitted to do short-term rentals, which is defined as 30 or less non-consecutive days in a year.
30.
Non-consecutive.
It's a two-step process. So it's any rental
You're live now.
that's less than 30 days and in duration, and you can rent it either for less than that. You could, as a renter, you could rent it for just those 30 days, or you can rent it cumulatively for over 30 days through the whole calendar year.
Or you can, as a property owner, rent your unit for shorter than 30 days at a time.
Right.
For less than a accumulation of 30 total days in the year.
Right.
But basically, if you are not meeting those criteria, which
Right.
confuse a lot of people,
Right.
you're required to get a permit.
Okay, so if I want to do the 6 month, like.
It's not.
No,
It's
it's
not
not covered.
Okay,
I have actors who stay at my house and
Yeah.
pay no rent, and they're there for more than 30 days.
Yeah.
I don't
And it's
require.
exchange of money too.
Yeah.
Right.
So no, if you're renting a piece of property for less than 30 days at one,
Even a month.
Chop.
I'd say, yeah.
right, then that's a short-term rental. So it's like you're doing it for a weekend.
Yeah.
But once you go over a month, then you're no longer a short-term rental and then the
That's
zoning,
an allowed, there's no requirement.
there's no requirement for town permitting in that regard.
Thank you. It's confusing. We'll call our meeting to order at 2:10 now that we are officially live. And let's see, our first point of new business is Tim planning to be here?
He is.
Okay.
I'm surprised.
Okay, well, why don't we go on and go with issue number 2 then, which is the review of the status of the mask resolution. I've had a call from the athletic club and a call from Wendy, who runs a couple of the businesses in Town Square, and both have requested that the selectmen continue to have a mask resolution, even though the governor has taken off the mandate for the state. And my proposal, I believe that our original resolution expired at the end of October because we did not re-up it. And we didn't re-up it because the New Hampshire mask mandate came in, okay?
Right.
So I would propose that we use our prior resolution and reinstitute it effective immediately and have it go to June 1st with a review at our second meeting in May to see if we need to do anything beyond that.
Okay,
Does that make sense to you, Mark?
makes sense.
It's
Yeah.
similar to what we were looking at in our personnel policy.
Mhm.
Again, rationale being that now that every adult is able to go out and get a vaccine, that by June 1st, if they have gone and done that,
Mhm.
probably will be fully vaccinated. So we'll have a much higher percentage of people. But we don't know what's going to happen with the variants and that type of thing. So we'll have another review, our second meeting in May, to see whether we want to continue with the resolution. Does that make sense to you too?
It does, and if that was a motion, I will second it.
All right. Okay, the motion is basically to reissue the selectmen's mask resolution effective immediately and going until June 1st with a review
On our second meeting.
on our
in May.
second meeting in May.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're so used to saying our names.
I
And
know.
I.
Yeah.
That's right. Now they could, yes.
Okay,
That'd be 26 May for the record.
Yeah.
I believe is when it's scheduled.
okay. All righty. All right, so the transit system plan, just to get this on the record. We have a request from the ski area to sign up for a new memorandum of agreement for our cost sharing, which typically the town pays 25% of the cost of transportation. And in the past, this memorandum of agreement has gone from November 1st until October 30th of the following year. And because of COVID last year, we did not have an agreement that started on November 1st, 2020. So the ski area is proposing to start an agreement as of April 2021 and going, is that right? And May
May
2021 and going to April 30th, 2022. The issue that raises for the selectmen is that relying on information provided from the ski area last year, we set aside 6 months of payment for the year from November 1st of 2020 to October 31st of 2021. The ski area is planning on starting the shuttle up on May 1st. And if we were under a real agreement for that period of time, we would have the right amount of money in the budget. Because the ski area is proposing to change the time, we would actually owe 8 months this year, which
Yes.
we would actually owe, because this is paid on a monthly basis, we would owe 8 months, which is about $10,000 more than we put in the budget. So that is why we asked Tim to come and talk with us, because I think at least for this year, what we'd like to do is a modification of the payment terms, and then we could make it up when we do our budget for 2022.
I see, instead of an amendment to the,
Instead of changing the agreement,
Right.
just agree to it
Right.
and budget the balance in
Into
22.
in
22.
22 instead of 21.
seems like the easiest way to.
So we don't have Tim here to talk about it, so. Do you have an
I
easier
have
solution?
texted him. No, I think that's a great solution. If he doesn't respond to my text, I can make that suggestion to him.
Right.
And
Does it say in the agreement when the payments are due?
well, they would start on May 1. That's the problem.
Yeah, but I mean, does it say that it has to be a monthly payment?
Yes,
Oh, it does.
there's an exhibit that's attached, and it's a payment schedule
It just says monthly.
that
Monthly.
that says monthly billing and 25% of that number.
Mhm. Is there also an issue in that the number is higher?
It
It's-
was a
it's-
$900 difference.
Oh, okay,
From what we budgeted to this number. So no, that's not
that's not an issue.
an issue.
Okay. All right.
So I would just tell Tim that we will begin payments on 1 July in the amount of $46.29, and that we would bill the additional $90 to $160
Into
in
the last
22,
6
and
months.
we will pay double payments in March and April next year to pay the total amount. Or we could even pay it January, February, so, because that's their busy time, and that's when they would need money.
Right.
That's when they'll operate.
That's what I
Is that
think would
okay?
make sense. And also, very important that he let us know when
Well,
we're budgeting.
and well, but I think they would need to tell us no later than the October 31 time period. They would need to come, or let's say the first meeting in November,
Mhm.
They would need to come in if they're gonna change the program and we need to talk about it so that you can budget the other 12 months for 22.
for 2022.
Yeah, I'm fine with all of that, yeah.
Does that make sense? Do we need a vote on that?
No, I mean, you're both in agreement with it. We've got it on the recording, so I think we're okay with that.
Okay. And last thing on our shorter meeting today is the scheduling the short-term rental discussion. We want to do that when Mike returns, because Mike
Monday.
has a lot of input.
Yeah.
And that would be Monday at 2?
Monday, a week from
Monday,
today.
the 26th at 2.
Yep. We will have a special meeting.
Do we have any questions or input from our public who is present? It's so nice to have public again. In person, no? And sir, I didn't know whether you were here for a specific reason.
No. I'm Jim DeRoche. I'm from the Black Bear Lodge, and I like to be involved in the local political scene. So I tend to come to select board meetings. I think it's a great way to learn about what's going on and get past the rhetoric, shall we say.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
So, and I was kind of hoping Tim was here to talk about public transportation, but
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess
what
he's a busy
happened.
guy.
I don't know
Yeah,
what
he is.
happened with the schedule, so.
And I was
All
really
we-
excited about learning more about the short-term rental. I
All
don't think
we
it affects
know-
me that much, but
Yeah, all we know at this point in time is that the ski area is telling us that they want to resume shuttle operations effective May 1st.
great.
Okay,
And on the short-term rental, we just need implementing legislation, if you would,
Of course.
for the amendments that were passed to zoning.
Yeah, I've read the amendments.
Right, so that's the problem, it's the planning board, but it gets dropped in the lap of the select board to enforce, to regulate and enforce, so. We're
So what
trying to
we're-
figure out how to do that, because
Right,
it's somewhat
and-
confusing.
with the idea of implementing on July 1st.
Yeah, I
of
do
this year.
recall that was
Yeah.
the date trying to.
And again, the
Move
reason that we need to do this is because the voters said that they wanted us to enforce this going forward. And prior to having these subdivision regulations, these changes, you were not permitted to have short-term rentals at all in the valley,
Right,
okay?
In the residential,
In
in
the
the
residential
yes, of course.
areas, yeah,
but it's been poached so much,
exactly.
and and it's everywhere.
it is, in fact, this is something that's on the radar for many towns.
Yeah.
In New Hampshire, I think Conway just defeated and put their select board, their amendments and put their select board in a bit of a bind, as I understood the article. Because they have short-term rentals going on, right?
Right, and similar to us, they didn't have provisions for it.
For it, right. And our municipal association, of which Waterville Valley, town of Water Valley is a part, strongly recommended that all its members, all the towns and cities that are members of the association, modify their zoning ordinance to account for short-term rentals, because that seems to be where the world has been going. I think the sense is that 2020, the COVID pandemic just sped up what was already happening in a lot of areas, and this was one area where people were looking to rent, get out of Dodge.
Well, yeah, and people are trying to supplement their housing and
Sure,
a whole bunch of other
sure.
opportunities, and the fact that the online reservation systems regarding those are, the top of the game. They're at the top of the food chain. They're
That's
brilliant. I'm page 3, lodging in Waterville. What comes up first is all the short-term stuff,
Sure.
because they've been so good at optimizing
Yeah.
their presence so we have to figure out a way to coexist.
Well, you're, I think, a bit of a unique situation, and that actually, if you could come to our meeting next Monday at
I'm going to.
2 p.m., that'd be very helpful, because there is that category that we're struggling with. It is and one aspect of it are people who own condominiums but are part of a larger lodge, which has a central.
But those
Essential.
aren't located in the residential zone, so it's not been an issue.
It's
because
not been an
treated
issue.
As a hotel.
That's right, and that's what we want to make sure we capture correctly in our whatever implementation regulation that we come up with. But we do talk about high density residential zone, and there is some activity there, I think. And we do talk about commercial zone too. This is where it gets a little confusing. The difference between someone who rents, who say owns a unit in a what we now call a lodging facility
Right.
with a central mechanism.
But those went through site plan review, and
That's
they
right.
are a commercial entity.
Yes.
So they would not
Yes,
fall under.
that was never our,
zoning.
correct, but I think there's some who think that maybe you
Yeah,
do.
right.
And that's what we're trying to, because there are people, like, I don't know in Black Bear Lodge, but there are, do people have to go through a central reservation system where they can, since they privately own a,
Well, the bylaws state central reservation system. We are
only?
the renters of, but you have competing entities, shall we say. And Mike's a good example of that, that tend to try to circumvent the system. And it has been allowed. Is it supposed to be? No, but it has been allowed.
You mean within?
Within our organization,
Right.
there technically the manager of the facility is the property manager responsible for the booking mechanisms. But there's been such a management turnover and lack
I
of
see.
foresight that other people have taken advantage of the situation.
And just renting on their own?
And
Through another broker
yeah.
or?
Well, yeah, through a broker.
Through a broker.
Now, I guess the classic example is the Golden Eagle. I mean, they've devastated themselves on their rental program because they've opened the door for these third-party bookings direct through the owners. I don't know how or why.
Right.
The GM over there has just been struggling.
Is that something that their members voted?
Association.
I suspect that their members voted. Part of it was to.
So you have the choice whether you go through the rental program or
Right.
do it on your own.
I see, right. And of
At
course,
the Golden Eagle, but not at the Black Bear.
Well, technically, you're not supposed to. Now, you can reside there if you want year-round. Although the bylaws are written, you probably shouldn't anyway. I mean, it was designed as a public housing, vacation, second home ownership. But COVID-19 has changed the spectrum of the owner. It's amazing.
It would be interesting to see what the planning board's discussion and approval was during site plan review and what
Mhm.
documents they were
boy,
showing.
that's going back a number of years. isn't it?
But yeah, I'm not sure we even have.
They're
those
probably there in some
records
file
anymore.
somewhere, right?
Yeah, but that, to me, that would be the controlling, what was
Should be.
approved by the town
Is what
At
should be
that time.
controlling, right,
is what should be going on.
of course.
And if the document said that you can only rent through the central reservation,
Right,
and they were approved as a
right.
lodge, a hotel lodge, or a condominium lodge, whatever, that should be the controlling.
Mhm.
There shouldn't be private rentals, really. I mean,
Right, but the other way at this too is I don't think we wanted to as a town, and I agree with you, by the way. At the same time, we didn't want to take any power out of the hands of the homeowners associations they can always have a much
Give them
more strict
stringent.
You can have a
or stringent policy with regard to rentals in their property, as long as that whatever the policy is abides by the town's policy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'd have to ask town council what the issue would be also when the property's being used differently than
Yes, if
it was approved.
it was
but,
approved, right, we
I
don't
mean,
know.
Airbnb didn't exist at the time.
Right.
The internet barely existed at
That's
the
right.
time that they.
No, I see where you're going.
I don't
that-
even think it
That
was.
there
it
is a
wasn't
town interest because the town approved a certain type of
a certain
commercial
type
activity.
of commercial activity.
And if
now
it's something
else
becomes
is
something
happening.
else, it should go in front of the planning
Right.
board for a site plan review.
That's right.
Because of a change of use.
Because that's like saying that a hotel, somebody could go into a hotel and rent out a room separate from the hotel. Because that's basically what you have happened.
Right. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
gonna
was
take a
one
lot
of
of
the
work.
original owners of Black Bear,
Where you,
1986.
that you have a copy of.
Do you remember what they?
We never considered renting our unit, so
Right.
if there was something in there, it was not
Yeah.
something that were applicable
That's
to
a
us.
tough question. I mean, it's,
And also to go to Jim's point, it's a condominium first. It's a lodge,
right,
but it's a condominium first, which
Right.
is private ownership. And we really, as a town, cannot say who can and can't use their property a certain way to some extent.
to some
Because
extent.
they're a property owner.
Right, and we eliminated in commercial properties, I think we
Right.
call them all lodging facilities.
That's
now.
right.
So, right. That's an interesting aspect of it that could become very
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah.
If we can even find the records.
Yeah.
But,
I would like to just recommend to the board that whatever way you deal with this on Monday, that there be some sort of recommendation, whether it go through Rich or by a letter or whatever to the planning board, that when they're talking about zoning ordinance changes, that part of the discussion that they have is to provide you with recommended changes, like implementing regulations.
I see,
Because we had this discussion during the deliberations
Many
over the
deliberations.
changes,
right.
this whole past year.
Mhm.
And so we should get ahead of these sorts of issues. Because right now we've gotten several phone calls about what do I do?
Right,
So we should be thinking about the implementing regulations up front. Because Chris kind of warned the board and I had said something to them about
yeah,
how do you
and-
enforce it?
yeah, I think, right,
If you do have this. done.
Right.
But isn't that an HOA thing really to enforce it? I mean,
No, not really. The town is supposed to, that's what the process we're going through right now is the implementing regulations, because the town meeting votes on the zoning ordinance, but the enforcement authority is with the selectmen. So the town did not tell us how to do it. That's up to the selectmen. So if we had a set of recommendations from the planning board, here's how we think you should enforce
I
it,
see, yeah,
that would be helpful. They're not adopted, the planning board wouldn't be adopting those, but they could at least be showing the selectmen, here's one way that we think you can do it.
so you're talking about the 30-day thing, which is on the agenda, but also, to your point, that it's just getting out of control with Black Bear or it's,
There are a lot of different aspects to it.
but then that's kind of the HOA too.
And the HOA cannot adopt a methodology that's less stringent than the town. So the HOA can't say you have an unlimited ability to rent your unit for a weekend at a time. If the town regulation says that you're limited to 30 days in a calendar year.
Or that you need a permit if you go
Or
over.
you need a permit.
If you go over 30 days, but the HOA can say, we prohibit all
That's right.
short-term, or can say, we only allow 5 a year, or 6 a year,
That's right.
or certainly, the homeowner association, as long as it's within the construct of the zoning ordinance,
Can be more restrictive.
can be more restrictive.
Now,
And
the
of course-
commercial properties are held to state and federal standards for fire safety.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, what about Airbnb short-term
Well,
stuff?
that's part of
That's
the
part of
discussion
it.
that
That's
we're
part
having.
of the discussion.
One of the things we're
because-
struggling with, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So you don't get
Because our
unequal
police
classes.
department goes out on an annual
Right.
basis and goes to all of the facilities where an inspection is required on an annual basis. So now, if we have somebody who is getting a permit, there will be some similar
Well,
types of
I guess
requirements.
that's the question.
That's the
Will-
question.
That's the question.
Will it be
Yeah.
required?
Will it be required? And because if you do the Google search on Airbnb for Waterville Valley, you get 600
oh, yeah,
returns, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean there's 600 properties out there, but there's probably a couple hundred.
Uh-huh.
And that's when we go from inspecting 25 entities to 225 entities, that's a whole different ballgame.
It's
as far
time
as-
management, budgeting, money for it.
Absolutely.
Right,
Um,
and then there's also the question of certain entities are already licensed, if you will, to look after every rental, to make sure that the taxes are paid and.
Right, property manager.
And
Right.
Yeah.
property manager,
Yeah.
yes,
Sure.
exactly. So the question is, if the individuals are going through one of these type of individuals, do they need a permit? Or does the permit really lie
Lie
with
with
the
the
fact that
property
you already
manager.
have a licensed property manager
Sure.
looking after things? Yeah.
Another aspect that's happened at other resorts are virtual property managers,
Right.
where you get somebody who comes in, able to cull off 35, 40 units within the greater property area as one. And that person just has a virtual presence with no, but their skill set is internet optimization, money collection, and the ability to maneuver people in and out to clean the units.
Right.
And they may not even be in the state. So
Yes, well,
it's a lot to
see what you've
consider.
gotten us into, Rich. Rich is our ex officio member of the planning board. So,
Yeah, the intent was not to increase work for anybody.
So there's no town liability in anything that we're talking about doing. Is there any liability for the town? Let's say you agree to a permit, if that's what happens, then is there no inspection or anything like we were just talking about associated with that permit or?
Well, that's what
That's the
we're-
issue.
That's the
Okay.
issue.
Because if you do it for less than 30 days a year, you don't need a permit.
Yeah,
So you
But
would
somebody's
have no
gonna
inspection,
check it.
right? Potentially. Whereas if you did it for more than 30 days a year, short-term rent, these short increments of rental, then the town requires you to have a permit. But then the question is, okay, what does getting a permit entail? Does that
Right.
mean the town has to
approve of
conduct
something.
safety or
Right.
health
And safety.
health and safety inspections?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to dig
And then
into.
where do property owner, property rights fall in this whole spectrum? Right? I mean, because you're
Right.
saying to property owners, if you rent it for more than 30 days at a time,
Right,
you're good to go.
right.
So,
And there's a liability anyway, just in general, like I live in Mountain Meadow, I'm on their board. And if you have people coming in and out and they're not careful, they could take my whole building down. You know?
well, and it also goes to state laws and their implementing regulations, because if you have a lease in the state of New Hampshire that is less than 6 months, then you have to pay meals and rooms taxes on it.
Right.
However, if you do a a lease for 6 months or more,
Mhm.
you don't pay meals and rooms taxes on.
Right, and one could presume
You
or
know,
assume
so,
that some of these people renting.
Are not paying.
well, that's why
rooms
everybody's
and meals
doing
tax.
6 months in one day.
Yeah.
Right, or they're doing their
166
weekends and not,
days.
166
166 days.
or they're not
days.
reporting if they're doing like a weekend.
Well, yeah, but according to the state is because of Airbnb
Right.
and VRBO. and
Are they on
everything
top of
else, they are being more aggressive.
Right,
So the state law is if you rent a bed, it doesn't even have to be a room.
right,
If you rent a bed for a single night and you post that publicly, that's
As for rent.
available,
right.
you pay meals and rooms taxes on whatever income you make.
And Airbnb collects now from.
And now Airbnb is
Okay.
adding 9% to whatever price they're given by someone to rent a
Craigslist does
unit.
not.
Huh?
Craigslist does not do that.
Craigslist is not yet.
But
Not
Yeah.
yet, but I'm sure at some point the state will say, okay, you can either do this or not. Or get in trouble.
Yeah,
So-
we'll enforce it.
So B and B,
We'll end up-
but the answer I haven't been able to get from the state is yet, can you give us a list of those entities that are involved in Airbnb? I'm not sure that Airbnb tells the state property by property what's happening. They probably give them a gross receipt per month or
Right.
week or whatever,
Right,
and give them their 9% of that.
actually, the owner gets 3% back of that 9% to keep the cost of keeping records.
But again, the state hasn't been able to,
Right.
or hasn't answered my question yet
Mhm.
on, because it would be nice to know what properties in Waterville Valley are on Airbnb, but I'm not sure that's available through the state.
I mean, I think the idea again was to stay away from all of this, as the town, and as far as renting, a condominium unit, the assumption was that it's part of a structure that already has a health and safety inspection regime attached to it. And therefore, there ought not to be anything further done in that regard. And that left us with the categories of houses, which would
But
rent.
not all condos are in that commercial entity. They're not all under management,
Right, not all.
like Village or Golden
That's
Eagle or
right.
Black Bear.
That's right,
You know, that type of thing, that's a permitted thing,
Right.
that's already inspected. Absolutely, they're exempt from what we're talking
right. Well, I guess we're looking at a place like Forest Knoll, where people can rent, there's no central management
about. There's no
agency.
central management.
But the building already is required to have, the buildings are required to have sprinklers, they're required to have carbon monoxide and fire.
Well,
Fire,
They are,
detection
but
units.
it's a separate code though,
right.
if it becomes a commercial entity.
That's
It
where
is
another
the
issue
same.
is.
I mean,
Right.
there are a lot of the same requirements, but they are different, whether it's a residential or a commercial use.
And then it comes down to, would you rent a place and have your own liability at stake if you don't have the insurance to cover it? Right. That was the other part of it. Anyone renting their own condo unit, best to have rental insurance. Right. So, I mean, there are these aspects of it. There are a couple key questions that we have to answer so we can construct implementing ordinance.
So more on that next Monday or two.
Yes.
Yes.
In the meantime,
I
unless anybody has anything else,
do have a non-public.
a non-public, okay, so at.
Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you.
All right,
Nice
thank
to
you.
meet
Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
20 minutes.
See you Monday.
We're gonna go.
Monday.